Good morning, everyone. I believe we have all panel members present. Good morning and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow members, Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabien Poulin and I will be chairing this hearing today. The procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition of each of the applications. Today, we'll hear oral submissions from any interested parties. As part of the statutory notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm that we have received all statutory declarations?
Mr. Chair, we have not received any statutory declarations. You'll need to administer the oath for all applications today.
Thank you, coordinator. The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the chair's discretion. There you go. Before we begin, we have 2 items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in any of the applications that are before us today or that are on the agenda of another committee panel? I don't believe we have any declarations of interest. And we don't have, the second item is that we don't have any minutes of past meetings to adopt. We'll now hear the application schedules for this hearing, and we'll first deal with any items that may be adjourned. I believe we have 2 items to be adjourned and 1 item to be withdrawn. First item is having to do with application BD08-01-21 and B00081, having to do with 4443 Wood Kilton Road. Mr. Shipman, are you available? Don't see Mr. Shipman yet. Mr. Shipman, are you there?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Great, good to see you. So
Thank you.
Are you able to discuss a little bit more further? Are you interested in adjourning your
Mr. Chair, we would like to be heard on the merits. We have our application heard on its merits today.
Okay. I'd like to ask, I believe it's Mr. Gordon, Mark Gordon, could you please describe your reasons for wanting the adjournment?
Yes. The reason, Mr. Chair, for seeking the adjournment is that the proposed lot is considerably larger than what is generally sought for surplus agricultural dwelling severances. It's larger than what is supported by the provincial policy statement and the city's official plan policies.
Thank you very much. Panel members, do we have any comments? I'd like to start with Mr. Otto.
I believe we should agree with Mr. Shipman and hear it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chandler?
I'm okay with either way. It's sort of at the applicant's risk.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lewis?
I'm willing to hear the application if everything we heard had to fit into the rules and regulations of planning department. There'd be no need to have us here today. I'd like to hear the application.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vervoort?
I agree to proceed. It's the applicant's choice, I think, in this circumstance.
Okay. Mr. Shipman, we'll hear your application today. Thank you. Okay. Now move on to application number 6, having to do 135 Heather Way or Heather Lane. Is Mr. Armitage available? Mr. Armitage? I don't see him as a panel or attendee as yet. Oh, there he is. Hello,
There we
Mr.
go. Sorry.
Armitage.
My status on the Zoom call changed and it shut down all my feeds. Good morning.
Good morning. So you would like to have an adjournment of your application today, sir?
Without prejudice to my original proposal, yes, sir. I'm interested in seeing what details come from the initial conversations I've had with the planning department.
Okay. And Mr. Gordon, you're in agreement with the adjournment today?
That's correct. We're currently working on a way forward for this application, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. When do we want to have this application adjourned till?
I believe it was July 21st in the report, if that is a committee date.
Are you in agreement with that, Mr. Armitage?
Yes, that'll be fine, sir.
Okay. Does that work, Madam Coordinator?
Yes, July 21st is a hearing date.
Perfect. Thank you. I'd like to ask the panel to adjourn this application to July 21st. All in favor, please raise your hand. Your application is adjourned to July 21st. Thank you, Mr. Armitage.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And I don't believe we have a representative of application number 7 having to do with 13 Lennox. And this application has been withdrawn, so we'll remove that from the agenda of today. We'll now proceed with the items in order. We'll begin with application number 1, having to do with 4443 Wood Kilton Road. Consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to create a new lot for surplus farm dwelling. Mr. Shipman, are you available?
And Mr. Chair.
Good morning, and I'd like to be able to administer an oath concerning the signposting today. Are you available to do that today?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed and provide us with a brief description of your application today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did submit a couple of images. I'm wondering if we could put up the capture, one labeled capture overhead. There we go. Thank you. So this is an application for severance of a surplus farm dwelling. The entire farm is about 40 hectares. We propose to sever off with the house a fairly large lot at 2.4 hectares. This proposed lot follows the ditch that you can see along the south side and the historical edge of the agricultural land along the north side and to the rear. So you can see on the property we have a number of buildings, the old vacant barn, the house towards the south. At the rear we have some solar arrays that have been installed right towards the rear sort of point of the property. It is sort of an irregular parcel, but it's defined typically by the edge of the cultivated area following the traditionally tilled and available land for tilling. There is some land out front. As you can see, I've indicated its size and area. To the south side of the laneway, we have a tilled field there that's approximately 1 acre, 0.5 hectare. To the north, there is another field there that's, and this image has a bunch of equipment and junk parked on it. The majority of it is planted in trees. So perhaps if we could switch to Capture Street 1, please. I could just illustrate what that front area looks like. So this is looking at the northerly field that indicated was treed. You can see the barn towards the back there and the laneway towards the left hand of the screen. Talking with the owner, who is going to retain the property for the time being anyways, he planted that in trees because there is little to no topsoil there. It's sand, I guess, has been brought in. So that 1 acre field is largely planted in trees and will continue to be so. If we could switch to Capture Street 2 image, please. This is along the south side and is the tilled field that we propose to include in the severed property with the house. As I indicated in my report, it is alienated from the rest of the cropland by way of the substantial ditch that you see on the left-hand side here. And so the only way to access that field right now is up the existing laneway towards the current house. I did note a comment in the staff report that the applicant, who is the person who will be retaining the house, has managed to till that field over the years. Yes, he has. It's tilled separately from the rest of the farm. Indeed, in my review of the Geo-Ottawa imagery available, 14 years imagery, in only 4 of them does it appear to be tilled in the same manner as the rest of the farm. All of the other images that we have available indicate it's, left to hay or tilled in some different manner, probably largely because of the huge size of agricultural equipment today. You would pretty much just back down in that field, have to back in, and the planter would be the full width of that field, the 50 meters that it is deep. Contrary to some of the comments contained in the reports, access to this would require, to this field, if it were to be retained with the farmland, would require substantial culvert access from the road. It's not a level entry as suggested in the planning report. There's at least 5 to 7 feet difference in height between the shoulder of the road and the field. So it would be a fairly difficult entry to keep this particular field with the farm. And again, in response to the comments, I put in my report that it's alienated from the rest of the farm. It is physically alienated from the rest of the farm. Keep in mind that over the years, this field has been owned by the same person as the rest of the farm. So obviously it's been tilled. Under the present application, were this to remain with the farm, of course, it would be a separate owner. And it would be truly alienated from the rest of the farm, in that it would be, it would require a separate physical access. So our point is that if this field at the south were left with the farm, it would truly be isolated from the remainder of the farm. And I would suggest that it wouldn't represent a good planning outcome, in that you'd have this 1 acre isolated field at the front of the farm, in front of that house, requiring a separate access just to get at that 1 acre. It just doesn't make sense from any practical perspective. I understand the desire and the requirements under the provincial policy statement and the official plan to preserve agricultural land, but I think at some point common sense has to kick in. This is, in terms of this field, it's a loss of 1 acre of agricultural land. Otherwise, we'd have quite an undesirable outcome. On the north end, it's similar circumstance, although access would not be required, new culvert access, but it is treed. It's a small area, and the soil there is no good, according to Mr. Damphouse, the current owner. I would suspect it would just grow up in weeds. Again, I don't think it would be a desirable outcome to make such an irregular parcel. If we could switch back to capture overhead, please. If we were to leave those 2 1 acre fields, I'm not seeing the capture overhead. The image, please, capture overhead, the first image. Yes, that one. To leave those 2 fields with the farm would create certainly a much more irregular lot, we're familiar with the regular lots when we have the long flagpoles, but this is far from a long flagpole. These fields are only 50 meters deep. So for all those reasons, I'm suggesting that trying to leave those fields with the retained farmland would be an undesirable outcome and would do little to preserve agricultural land. The real loss of agricultural land, I would suggest, is 0.4, 0.5 hectares out of a 40-hectare farm.
Thank you, Mr. Shipman. Mr. Gordon, can you please describe the city's position or the planning department?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The soils on this parcel have a high Lear score, and pursuant to the official plan, severance may be granted by the city for the creation of a new lot, which is located a dwelling immediately adjacent buildings made surplus to the farm consolidation. So based on those policies, it's our opinion that the treed portion and the field at the front should remain with the agricultural parcel. And we are commonly seek irregular parcels, so that would not be a concern from the city's perspective.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask our conservation partners if they have any comments or concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the subject property, there is that water course which has been identified along the edge of the severed property. The Conservation Authorities reviewed the application. Both the severed and retained lots maintain area for development outside of a 30-meter setback. Our recommendation would be to maintain, where possible, a vegetated buffer along the water course, but we have no objections to the proposed severance.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now ask the panel for any questions, comments, or concerns. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand Mr. Gordon and the planning department hands are kind of tied in this. But Mr. Shipman, the problem with your application is it makes too much sense. I see the Second Street view, and to touch a little bit on the Mississippi Valley, the Second Street view picture showed runoff into that ditch. And I noticed that if that was greened up, that would solve at least half of that problem. You got your ditch lined up perfect with a culvert across the road. If you're going to farm a 1 acre piece, you can hardly get in there and turn around. So you're going to have to change the ditch at a big expense, run it down straight out. The city's going to be on the hook to dig the ditch out deeper so it hooks up with the culvert. And the other thing I noticed on your First Street view picture, I seen the condition of the road. I wish somebody would send that picture ahead to the road department, and maybe they could spend a little time on that. Anyway, I support the severance as presented by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Otto, do you have any comments, questions, or concerns?
Just, I guess, one or two. Number one is the property been sold? The balance of the land, has it been sold and going to be farmed out with a larger operation? And the second one was, if this was approved as presented by Mr. Shipman, it doesn't prevent the new owner from farming those two fields if he wanted to anyways. So I'd like a response to those two questions, please.
If I may, Mr. Chair. Yes, I believe the first question was in regards to the ownership. The purchaser, applicant purchaser, is a cash crop farmer, and the intention is to farm the land, the retained parcel as part of a large cash crop operation. It's under agreement of purchase and sale right now. I don't think it's closed pending resolution of the severance application. So we're waiting for approval and obviously the rezoning to go into place before closing. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your second question.
Well, it was that I understand the current owner is going to retain that larger portion per se with the house on it. And if he was to sell it in the future, it would not prevent someone from farming that front field anyways. So it could be a small type vegetable operation or whatever, if they bought that, they could farm it. So it wouldn't be taken out of production anyways. So that's my understanding. Could you confirm that?
Yeah, yes, I expect that would be the case. I can tell you, if it were part of the larger farm, the cash crop farm operator would have a great difficulty in trying to till that front field. Other than, I suppose, to bring different equipment on site on a different trip, it probably would barely be worthwhile or not be worthwhile for the cash crop farmer to try and operate that 1 acre field, especially with the expense, as other member of the committee had suggested, with just providing access to that field.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. Mr. Vervoort, any questions or comments?
No, I understand that. I understand the department's concerns, but I think I'm persuaded by Mr. Shipman's practical approach to this. I agree that it would be very difficult to farm that sort of orphan parcel at the front of the property. And even though it doesn't exactly fit in the box or exactly meet the requirements of the official plan or the provincial policy statement, I think that's the committee's job, is to deal with those situations where we have anomalies. I think by allowing the proposed severance, it does provide some buffer to the adjoining agricultural areas. There's some trees there. Possibly some more trees will be planted along that ditch or whatever. So that'll prevent soil erosion and buffer the existing or the commercial farm operation for the land that's being sold to the adjoining farmer. So I'm in favor of it in these circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Vervoort. Ms. Chandler, do you have any questions or comments?
I agree with Mr. Vervoort.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just before you continue with approval, we do not have any conditions from planning on this. So perhaps Mr. Gordon could provide those verbally.
Thank you, Madam Coordinator. Do you have any conditions, Mr. Gordon?
Yes. Should the committee approve this application, we would like to request that the standard rezoning condition be placed on the agricultural land, that the notice on title be placed about groundwater quality and quantity, and that the owner convey road frontage across both the retained and severed lands to the city.
Okay, so there's 3 conditions, Mr. Shipman. Do you agree with those 3 conditions?
I do, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I think we also have to impose the usual 50-12 condition, right? Or
That was the first one, I thought, but
sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
okay. So with these 3 conditions, I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application.
The 50-12 would only apply if it was being joined to another farm, wouldn't it? We don't necessarily know the farmer lives next door.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
I don't believe he does, but
No, there is. It's not being merged with adjoining land, so the rezoning will be required.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with these 3 conditions, I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. Your application is approved.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to application number 2. Application number 2 is concerning 3232 McKay Road. Again, Mr. Shipman, are you available?
I am.
Great. Okay. So I need to administer the oath that your signposting was on the property. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
Yes.
Thank you. Would you please give us a brief description of your application?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application to sever 2 roughly 2 acre, 0.8 hectare residential lots from a large rural and bush property on Gallagher Road near its intersection with Mackey Road. Under the official plan provisions for severances, the applicant is entitled to apply for 2 new lots, as no previous severances exist. We have prepared an environmental impact study that's made sort of the standard recommendations and for approval. And I understand that the standard conditions have been requested in that case. Other than that, I have nothing else to offer. I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shipman. I'd like to ask Mr. Harrigan to provide the perspective from the city's side. Mr. Harrigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Planning Department has reviewed the application and the corresponding environmental impact statement, and we have no concerns with the application.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. I'd like to ask our conservation partners for their questions or comments on this application.
The Chair, the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority has reviewed the application and has no concerns or objections.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask the panel for their questions or comments. Ms. Chandler, any questions or comments?
I only have one question, and I'm sure there's a very reasonable answer to it. Why are the 2 lots not tucked against the side? Why is there like a space and then the 2 lots and then a larger space along the frontage?
Mr. Shipman.
Thank you. That was prepared in that manner at the applicant's request to leave room for access up through that side of the property to the rear of the property. He has requested to leave that there, one for any potential future access requirements or potential future development requirements that may be there, as little as they may be. But short answer to your question, that's the configuration that the applicant has requested, to leave access up that side.
Okay, I don't know any policies one way or the other. I was just curious. Thank you. Other than that, I have no concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, any questions or comments?
No questions, concerns, comments, all good.
Mr. Otto.
No, I'm good, thank you. Just have to go over the conditions.
Yep. Mr. Vervoort, any questions or comments?
None, thank you. Ms. Chandler asked my question.
Thank you. Mr. Shipman, have you reviewed the conditions and are you happy with them and consent to them?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we reviewed them. They all seem to be standard conditions such as they are currently.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Shipman. Thank you very much. I would like to move on to application number 3, having to do with 1048 Boucher Crescent. Is Ms. Steele available? Ms. Steele? Michelle Steele.
Hi there, yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to administer the oath concerning the statutory for the posting of your sign on the property. You available? Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
Yes, I have.
Thank you very much. Could you please describe briefly for us the application today?
Yeah, there's currently a home on the property. I'd like to have it removed by 2 movers and construct a new home at that in the same location and no closer to the water course than it currently is, and in the similar spot towards the road as it currently is.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Mr. Harrigan, would you like to present the city's position?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Planning Department has reviewed the application and we have no concerns at this time. No objections.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harrigan. Conservation Partners, are you able to make some comments on this application?
Through the chair, the Weir Valley Conservation Authority has reviewed the application and does not have any concerns or objections with the requested reduction to the water course, specifically as it's no closer than existing. Also noting that the septic system, there was no other alternative locations on the site given the constraints present. So again, with the septic system location, there are no concerns there either. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lalonde. Now I'd like to ask the panel for their comments or questions. Ms. Chandler.
No, no concerns or questions.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort.
None, thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
All good.
And Mr. Otto.
I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harrigan, there doesn't seem to be any conditions here. I don't want to miss them like I did the last one. Can you confirm that there are no conditions?
There was, through you, Mr. Chair, we did have a condition that a grading survey be prepared by professional engineer, Ontario Land Surveyor Certified Engineer Technologist. We also require that the owners must obtain demolition permit prior to starting demolition, and that the owners must obtain a building permit prior to building the proposed house.
Thank you very much. Ms. Steele, are you agreeable to those conditions?
Yes, I am. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Now,
I'd like to ask.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, just to clarify, I don't think, because it's a minor variance, they're not necessarily conditions. I think they're just information for the applicant.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. And all those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Ms. Steele. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Now we're moving on to application number 4 and 5. I guess they could be heard concurrently. So I'd like to ask, I guess it's Mr. Ryan McGladry concerning application for the address at 3285 McGladry Road.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the panel.
Good morning. I need to administer the oath concerning the signposting on your property.
Sure.
Are you able to take that now?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you. Please provide us with a brief description of your application today.
So the first application is for my my parents' property, which is next door to my property. It is for a surplus farm dwelling lot line adjustment, whereby the approximate 23 acres of agriculture land on the north and west side of their property is to be merged with the property to the north, which is known as 4155 Sarsfield Road.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon, would you like to present the planning department's position?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the department has no concerns with this application.
Thank you very much. And our conservation partners, do you have any questions or comments?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. We don't have any concerns with the application. We have noted in our letter that there's a floodplain that terminates just to the west of this property, and that the floodplain may in fact extend onto the property. But no concerns with what's being proposed today.
Thank you very much. Mr. Revort, any questions or comments about this application?
No questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any questions or comments concerning this
No
property?
questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
No, I'm just wondering about the building department condition a little bit. But other than that's good.
Okay. Ms. Chandler, any questions or comments?
None.
Okay. There happens to be one condition, Mr. McGladry, and it's a lot line adjustment, the standard 5012 condition. Are you in agreement to that?
I'm not privy to that condition.
Was that not in your report, Mr. Gordon?
I believe it was in the report, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So it's just a standard lot line condition that when you merge properties, that these things will be, I guess, properly described and certain requirements met, just a standard condition.
Okay. Yes, I would be in agreement with that.
And there's one other building code services comment. They require a spatial separation analysis. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
Okay. Mr. Gordon, can you describe that for the applicant?
I'm going to ask my colleague, Kershawn Walker, if he could provide information on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walker, are you available?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So unfortunately, the planning department cannot speak to building code services conditions or comments.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it. So any one of the panel members happen to be familiar with a spatial separation analysis?
I think I can speak to that. It's just confirming that the lot lines are in the correct place based on where the buildings are located and if there are windows in those buildings, etc. I don't think it's going to be a big issue on this particular application.
Thank you, Mr. Verwoerd.
Okay.
Any further comments, Mr. McGladrey?
Not particularly. It would be, maybe I'll reach out to Mark Gordon separately to see if he can provide me with some information in order to see exactly what's required as part of that condition.
It's just a comment. It's not a condition.
Okay.
All right. So now I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please.
Question, just a question. I can see that building thing could turn out to be a problem. And if it's just a not a condition, just a whatever, do we need it? If nobody can speak to it, tell us exactly what it is, I would suggest tossing it.
Okay. Mr. Verwoerd, any comments?
Well, I don't think it needs to be a condition in this case because there's no proposed or possible development on the adjoining land. So it may be redundant. I think if like for future reference, like I wouldn't include it this time, but I think for future reference, if we get these comments in, then maybe the planning department can coordinate with building code services and see if it's necessary or whatever under the circumstances. But I don't think in this case it's necessary because I don't believe there'll be any development on any of the adjoining lands.
Mr. Otto?
I agree. I think we should toss it.
Ms. Chandler? Still muted.
I don't have any concerns or follow-up to that.
Okay. I agree with the other members. I don't think we need to have it if nobody can address it and provide any further information on it. I would also, to use Mr. Lewis's words and Mr. Otto's words, toss it. So to that end, I'd like to ask for approval of this application without the spatial separation analysis requirement and just the one condition, 5012. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. McGladrey. Thank you. On to your application number 5 now. I still need to administer an oath concerning this application as well. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Please go ahead and provide us with your summary of the application.
So very similarly to the previous application, this property for 3195 McGladrey is my own property. We will be doing a surplus farm dwelling lot line adjustment with an adjoining farm. It is a different farm that will be, this parcel will be merged to, and that property would be to 4245 Sarsfield Road.
Thank you, Mr. McGladrey. Mr. Gordon, any comments on behalf of the city?
The department has reviewed the application and has no concerns, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Conservation Partners, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've reviewed it as well and don't have any comments or concerns.
Thank you very much. Similarly, Mr. McGladry, there's the lot line adjustment condition as well as the BCS spatial separation analysis requirement here. And I think what we'll probably end up doing is doing the same as we did in your other application and remove that latter comment. To that end, I'd like to ask the panel individually for their comments, questions, or concerns. Mr. Lewis?
None.
Mr. Otto?
No comment, thank you.
Ms. Chandler?
None, thank you.
Mr. Vervoort?
None, and I would just impose the same one condition we did on the last application.
Agreed. All those in favor of approving this application with the one lot line 5012 condition, please raise your hands. Your application is approved. Mr. McGladry, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to application number 8 and 9, having to do with 51 Henry Goulburn Way. And I'm not sure who's joining us today on that one. Let's grab the... There we go. Mr. Sinclair.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Sinclair. I need to administer an oath on the signposting for your property. Are you able to take that oath?
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible at that time?
I do.
Sorry? Great. Please proceed and provide us with a brief application summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The application before you today is for a double consent and minor variance for the creation of one new lot. So there'd be 2 lots total. The minor variance requested is to reduce the lot width of each proposed lot to 15.24 meters, where 20 meters is required. As you can see in the letter that I gave you as part of the application and the planning summary, though it does not meet the requirements of the R1D zoning, it does meet the general intent of the zoning and conforms with what current lots have been severed in the area and what the lot fabric of the area is starting to trend towards.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. Mr. Gordon, do you have any comments on behalf of the city?
The department has no concerns with the application subject to the conditions contained within my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And Conservation Authority, do you have any comments?
Authorities reviewed the application, have no comments or objections.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for comments or questions concerning this application. Mr. Vervoort.
I just wanted to confirm that there were no other parties that wanted to speak to this, because I know we had some correspondence on it previously.
Is there any members of the public available that would like to speak today? I don't see any further attendees or outside the panel that are in attendance. So I think there is no one to speak to that from the public. Mr. Vervoort, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I have no comments. I understand that this meets the provincial policies and the objectives of the city official plan regarding infill. So I'm supportive of the severances and the minor variance applications.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any questions or comments?
I guess I'm only concerned about this whole area will now be subject to probably similar applications. And I'm assuming that at one point, these lots were made a certain size for a reason. And now we've changed that reasoning, I gather. Is there anybody could answer my concern in regards to that, mainly from the planning department?
Mr. Gordon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that the way that we plan areas has evolved since the time that this area was originally built, and this type of application is consistent with an evolution of the built fabric. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Otto?
More or less, I guess, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lewis, any questions or comments?
I support the application, but my comment is, as everybody knows, I don't like to see big lots split into smaller lots, and it's what's happening. But anyway, I support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler?
I don't have any additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you aware, Mr. Sinclair, of the 5 different conditions available on this application?
I am. I would request, though, that condition number 2 be removed, as it is a duplicate of condition number 4. And the fact that condition number 2 requests that each additional parcel has its own independent storm. There's no storm in this area. It's all done by ditch work. And condition number 4 does not have that requirement of storm.
Okay. Mr. Gordon, any comments? Do you agree with removing that condition?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, perfect. So with the removal of condition number 2, I ask the panel for approval of this application. Please raise your hands if you approve. Your application is approved, Mr. Sinclair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I don't believe we have any further applications to review today. I'd like to thank everyone for your attendance and have a great rest of your day.